Welcome to the historic Y in Tucson, and to the second night of the fourth in a series of lectures on spiritual partners and sacred relationships by Geshe, Roach, and Christy McNally. My name is Candy Hirsch, and I have a few announcements, brief announcements. Some of you know me. I'm a behavioral health therapist here in Tucson, and one of my specialties is working with couples. And one of the most common things that I see in my work is couples coming in, or just individuals working, wanting to do some work, blaming other people about their unhappiness. And last night, how many people were here last night? Oh, good. So for those of you who weren't, last night we got about 5 or 6 different proofs about why that's not true. And did anybody feel a little disconcerted after last night? If you did, you might feel you're in good company, because it takes a little bit of angst in order to make change. And because we're so habitually used to seeing other people out there and blaming them for things, habits are hard to change. So the research shows that after a lecture or a workshop, it takes reviewing the material in order for the material really to take place, for you to add it to your life and use it in your life. And so I would like to make that a little bit easier for people by adding, we're going to start a Spiritual Partners discussion group the second Wednesday of every month. And there are purple flyers out on the table, and you're welcome to pick them up. They will be located at my house. And it is not a therapy group, don't worry. It's a discussion group on how to use these principles and actually apply them to your life. So please come. For those of you who know about Krishna Das, tomorrow night there's a concert with Krishna Das and Geshe and Christy. It's an Easter concert at Anjali Yoga Studio from 7 to 10. It will sell out. If you're interested in coming, please register either online at Diamond Mountain or out front with Susie. But we'd like to thank Rob Ho for organizing that as well. Rob, would you stand up? So if you have cell phones, please turn them off. We are so lucky to have Geshe Michael and Christy here teaching us, Sanskrit and Tibetan scholars who have translated these teachings into our cultural world so that we can really understand them. And now I'm going to read their bios. Geshe Michael Roach is the first Westerner in 600 years to pass a rigorous test for the title of Geshe, or Master of Buddhism, at Saramay Tibetan Monastery, after 20 years of study in yoga and philosophy of India and Tibet. He's an honors graduate at Princeton University and has received the Presidential Scholar Medal at the White House. Geshe Michael is the author of over 30 translations of ancient texts, as well as books such as the international bestseller The Diamond Cutter and the Tibetan Book of Yoga. And this book, with Geshe Michael and Christy did this one together. So Christy McNally is a translator and teacher of ancient Tibetan and Sanskrit texts. She's a graduate of New York University and has trained at Tibetan monasteries in Nepal and India. She's a professor at Diamond Mountain University and has studied yoga extensively with some of the greatest Indian, Tibetan, and Western masters. She and Geshe Michael recently completed a traditional great retreat of 3 years, 3 months, 3 days, I think 3 hours, in the high desert in Arizona. So please welcome Geshe Michael and Christy.
Yeah. it's a tradition in our lineage to start our teaching with a prayer. So we'll do a short prayer. If you don't know it, just think that you're offering all the money and your house and all your time to the teacher. Okay, let's start. Just a little review for those of you who weren't here last night. We are reading some little snippets from a very great book, maybe the greatest book ever written in the Buddhist tradition, called The Root Text on Wisdom, the Poem on Wisdom. And it was written about 18 centuries ago by a great sage that we call Nagarjuna. Sometimes he's called Arya Nagarjuna. Arya, in our tradition, means someone who is a high saint or who has seen ultimate reality. So he's famous for having done that. So we call him Arya Nagarjuna. And he's considered the father of all Buddhist teachings on the subject of emptiness. So this is his most famous book, and his book was in the form of an examination of 27 different ideas, 27 different riddles or questions, difficult questions to solve. And we, just to mention one of them again, just to catch you up on one of them, and we've been applying his book to partnerships, like finding your perfect partner, getting them to stay with you. And then the most important step is number 3, because sometimes you find them and sometimes you stay with them, but you're not too happy with them. So number 3 is like, be happy with them. So it's one thing to find your perfect partner. It's a different thing to get them to stick around. And then it's even more difficult to be happy together if they do stick around. So we've been applying Arya Nagarjuna's wisdom to the idea of partners, and especially spiritual partners. And last night we were posing one of his quandaries, one of his riddles. He said, when is the moment that Christy first walked in the door of my place in New York, what was how could she have walked in the door, you see? And then we were talking last night, one of the ways to look at it is, when did her foot cross the edge of the door, the threshold of the door? At what point did her foot cross the line of the door? Because that's when we met, right? And so we got to where her foot was getting closer, 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 and so close to the edge of the threshold that you can't see a space between her foot and the threshold. It's still not touching the threshold. But I don't know, say it's like a micrometer away or something, right? But my eye can't detect that distance. To my eye, it looks like her foot already crossed the line of the door. So you can imagine a space which is the smallest amount of space that your eye can detect, that her foot is away from the threshold. And then she passes that into a smaller space, which your eye cannot detect. So if you take the smallest little space, the smallest distance that your eye can see, it has to be made up of smaller spaces, right? Like a ruler is made up of 12 inches, right? Not. Okay. And the distance, the smallest distance I can see with my eye, it must be made up of smaller distances, right? So, but I can't see those smaller distances, right? And we can tell, you can't see all these flowers, you can't see this bouquet, unless your eye first cruises over to the left side, and then cruises over to the right side, and then up to the top and down to the bottom. Your eye, that's why eyeballs, if you watch somebody's eyeballs, they jiggle around like this. They're taking snapshots of left, right, up, down. That's a bouquet of flowers. You cannot see a whole bouquet of flowers. You must see first the right side, left side, top, and bottom. In other words, you have to be able to see the parts of a thing in order to see the thing, right? No. So in order to see the smallest distance her foot was from the edge of the door when we first met, I must have been able to see the two halves of that distance. Right? I must be able to see the parts to see the whole. But I can't detect that part. So it's impossible that she entered the door. It's not possible that she entered the door. And there's lots of things like that. And your mind is struggling. Right now your mind is like, yeah, but that doesn't really prove it. It does prove it. You just don't want to admit it. You see? No, I mean, in the monastery we do debating. You've seen Tibetan debating, it looks like karate, right? We do like 3-4 hours a day, 5 hours. And you get someone in a corner and you prove something to them. And then there's this kupa utsu. They call it, say kupa, utsu. Kupa, utsu. Kupa means idiot. Utsu means sticking to what you said. Idiot sticking to what you said, oh, you're just doing kupa utsu. Kupa utsu means, come on. We said you have to see the parts to see the whole. We said you do see a smallest distance. You can't see smaller than that. But you have to see the parts of that to see the smallest distance. But you can't see any smaller parts. So you cannot be seeing the smallest distance. There's something going on. That's just one, and we gave you he's giving 27 different proofs for why what you think is going on cannot be going on. Okay? What you think is going on cannot be going on. Right? And then we were sitting in Jampa Juice, our last week at Jampa Juice before we go out to the metropolis of Puri. And you can only get a Coke at the gas station there. So we were thinking, we were sitting in Jampa Juice and we're thinking, but what are you guys thinking about this class so far? I mean, you're probably thinking, okay, that's interesting. I hope they get to the partner thing sooner or later. And, and your mind just rebels in a way. Kupa utsu. Your mind rebels. Kupa utsu. Your mind says, look, Christy did walk in the door. She's sitting up there with you. She must have walked in the door, That proves she walked in the door. So, it's interesting what you said about the smallest distance of her foot and everything. And that's all interesting, but the fact is, things happen. And you can't deny it. Things happen. We see things happen. We see her walk through the door. But this thing about the foot, it should keep you up at night, I hope. You should be able not to be able to sleep tonight. You're like sitting there and wondering, what's that got to do with Christy, And hey, maybe that is true, What it does, it throws a tiny sliver of doubt into every single interaction you have in the day with every single person and thing. It throws a doubt It throws a tiny sliver of doubt into everything you hold sacred about your world and your reality. It throws into question everything you do and everything you think. You know, it's possible that there's a glitch, a fundamental error that your mind is making. And I was reading a book. We were reading a book the other day. There was a scene where somebody's torturing this other person, and he like gets him tied up, and then he takes his leg, right, and he breaks it over his knee. He breaks the guy's leg over his knee, and you're like wincing when you read this. Then he takes his arm and he breaks it over his knee, you know, and then he takes his other leg and his other arm and his thigh, and then he's got all these broken bones. And then he just collapses on the floor. He can't move. He's not dead. The guy just leaves him like that. He just leaves him in a room. And he just leaves, you know. And we're like that. We're like a person like that. We are incapable of moving. We're like trying to move 100 miles and all the bones are broken in the body. It's like we are like that. Every single unit of your body and mind are mistaken somehow. Everything is wrong. There's a fundamental error that goes from your personal life up to international politics. You know, there's a fundamental mistake going on, and it infects all human endeavor, not just relationships, right? But by the way, it makes any good relationship impossible. It just makes it impossible. Okay? It's impossible to be happy at all if you're still making this fundamental error that we all make. You see? So Arya Nagarjuna's task, what he's trying to set out to do, is to alert us to a fundamental mistake in the function of the mind that prevents you cannot be happy. It's impossible to be happy. You know, everyone thinks someone else's marriage is going well. It's not. No, everybody's looking at someone else's partnership and thinking, yeah, they're doing it, why can't we do it, you know? It's impossible. As long as we have this fundamental mistake in the mind that has to do with her foot reaching the door, it's impossible to be happy. It's utterly impossible. It's like walking with all your bones broken. It's not possible. So last night we tried to we gave like 5, 6, 10 different ideas that prove something fishy is going on. You know? No, I mean, something's wrong with there's a crack in your belief about your life. And we're trying to widen the crack. You see? The way you see your reality has been slightly cracked. And then we have to try to widen the crack and then bring you to a different reality. And then if you can, and you're there in the same world, right? You don't have to go to a cave, or you don't have to even go to Diamond Mountain University. You just stay in your normal life, you do your normal stuff with your normal family and your job, and everything you do, you don't have to change anything. It's a different way of looking at everything. It's a new way of looking at things that makes you profoundly and deeply happy and contented, whatever you do. So, Christy's going to tell you why. Oh, she wants me in there. Okay. You sure? All right. She said I have to do the first verse. We're going to do riddle 13. It's on page 11. I'll read the Tibetan to show off so you think we know what we're talking about. Kaltengo ni mena, shendugyo kangiyin. Kaltengo ni yena, shendugyo jitarun. If things have no essence of their own, then how can they change to something else? And if they do have an essence, then how could they ever change? And we're talking about the good times with your partner. I say it's like surfing, especially in San Diego. I used to spend the summers in San Diego when I was a kid. And we surfed. I had 3 brothers, 4 of us, we went out surfing, like every single day. And even after we got jobs, we would meet after work and go surfing, you know, until it got dark. And why is surfing so interesting? Why is surfing so... People think it's when you're riding the wave, you know. They see pictures of somebody like shooting along a wave and they say, wow, that's cool, you know, that must feel really exhilarating. And it does. But the fact is, you're not surfing about 80% or 90% of the time. Really. I mean, I think if you timed it, it's maybe 95% of the time. You're just sitting on the board, and in California, you're facing the sun. The sun's going down. You're on this board, like the board's underwater. It's like 3 inches underwater. So you feel like you're just sitting on the ocean, you know? And it's the coolest feeling, and you're just waiting for a wave. You're just watching, and you get really good at picking out little hints that a wave is coming, and then you move this way or that way. But the main thing is this, it's this waiting for a good wave, you know? And sometimes you only get one wave in the whole evening, you see? It's the waiting. And then when you get one good wave, you're like addicted. You see? If a wave was coming every minute, I think it wouldn't be so interesting. It's the, I don't know how to say it, it's the beauty, or it's the waiting, and then the fulfillment in the moment that a wave comes. And then you're hooked, you know? Then you will come back tomorrow. You see? Because you want to find out if there's going to be a wave tomorrow. You see? And it's this... Like, I don't know why, but for human beings it's more interesting if this beauty happens to you like occasionally. It's more addicting then, because it's not sure, and then you value it more. So, with a partner, you get these moments of bliss, you know, you get these moments that make you stay, right? It's this like, everything just a couple times a day or a couple times a week, it just passes into some beauty, you know, like, for 5 minutes or for 15 minutes or half an hour, you're like just really happy. And then you stick it out the next day, because maybe they'll happen again. You know, and no, most of the day is running around, you know, did you do the laundry? And, you know, did we write a check to so-and-so? And, you know, we got to get, they talk, we're late again, you know. And then there's this pockets of like really deep happiness, you know, like really blissful happiness. And I think because they happen randomly almost, right? That's what keeps you there, because you're just like curious, when's the next one going to happen, you know? And obviously it would be, is it desirable to stretch them out and to make them more predictable? And is it possible, right? And then people say, not really. You see, we were brought up to say, no, that's not the way it's going to work. There's even people who say you can't appreciate the moments of bliss without some hard times. You know, they say by comparison, that the moments of bliss exist by comparison. You see, that's what they would say. You appreciate the good times together because most of the time it's just normal life. It's just laundry and checks. You know, and feeding the dog or taking out the garbage. And then you appreciate the special moments by comparison, right? And we even had something like that in here, in this reading. It said you can't see something coming unless you can see something going, right? So this is kind of what you could call a comparative idea of life. You know, you must have bad days in your relationship, or you can't even tell it when you're having a good day. You see, this is some kind of theory that people say. And that's totally, completely wrong. Okay? It's not that way. People say, Buddhist philosophers say that. They don't. They don't say that. Okay? A feeling of happiness or contentment with your partner for 10, 15 minutes, an hour, this is absolute. This is absolute. It doesn't depend on other things. It doesn't depend on feeling bad that half hour before that. It doesn't depend on that. It's not true that things exist by comparison. Okay? The moment of happiness by itself is a moment of happiness. And if you could recreate the causes for it, you would be happy all the time. So we just don't understand the causes of happiness. They happen to us like waves come in to a surfer. It's not like a surfer can say, okay, in 3 minutes I'm going to have a really good wave. You know, you wouldn't even think of that. It doesn't work that way. You can't tell the guy sitting next to you, there's a good wave coming in 3 minutes, you know, and it doesn't work like that. And that's how we perceive our relationships. We think that we have this vague feeling that we'd like to be happy all the time. Whenever we're in one of those bliss pockets, we wish it would go on forever. But we don't really expect it. Right? We don't really expect it because life has taught us otherwise. You know, life has taught us otherwise. And we make adjustments. We think they will work. Right? We try things. We were trying to think of an example. We thought of one the other day. You go to the store to buy a calculator. You know, you go to the store to buy a hand calculator. And you go in and you say, I need a hand calculator, I need a good one. They say, well, we got this, David Stubb probably has one, Texas Instruments scientific thing. You know, it does square roots and everything. And that's $230. And you say, well, I don't really need that, you know, I just need to add and multiply sometimes, you know. Like I don't remember the times tables ever since the calculators were invented, you know. And they say, okay, and I can't figure out the one on my laptop, and forget it. So you say, I need a calculator. They say, well, we have a $10 calculator, and it's really nice. And you say, wow, thanks. And they say, only one thing, it doesn't always work. Like sometimes it adds up the numbers wrong, but it's really cheap, and it's no problem. You could probably do it 3 times, and you can figure out what the total is, you know. And then where'd you buy this calculator? You see? Or we have another example. You're getting on we came out of 3-year retreat. There are all these new airlines like Blue and Song and Spirit, and we never heard of these things. Like we got on a flight, and there was Song, and everyone was into the songs, you know. And we were like, wow, things have changed. I wonder if this is a big airline or not. And suppose like you're getting on the door, you get to the door of this, you get down the ramp, and you're about to step. I always feel this finality when I step across from the ramp into the door, you know. Like she steps across and I try to get right in case the ramp falls off or something. And I just feel it, I don't know why. I suppose they have, right? And so she steps in, and I'm like trying to step in, and then the stewardess like grabs you and stops you, you know, and you say, what? And they say, sign this paper. You know, you say, I have a ticket, I have a stub here, I have a seat, you know. They say, no, sign this paper. And you say, no, everything's all right, I have a reservation, they took my luggage, you know. And you say, they say, no, just sign this, it's just a little thing, you know. And you say, what do you mean a little thing? When people say a little thing, I get nervous, you know. And they say, it's just a waiver. Well, what do I need a waiver for? Well, you know, we're a new airline. Yeah. And we just about got this flying thing figured out, you know. And most of the time we get up and we come down just fine, you know. And then just once in a while, you know, and you're like, you're kidding me, right? And they say, no, you have to sign. And there's like 20 people lining up behind you, and they're just putting pressure on you. There's 20 people behind you, just sign, you know. And you wouldn't sign. You wouldn't sign. You would say, God, I'm going to go back to American Airlines or United Airlines that existed before the 3-year retreat. You know? And they know what they're doing. Like, they never asked me to sign a waiver, you know. And then you laugh. You think, who would buy a calculator that doesn't add up all the time? And who would get on a plane where they told you it might not fly or it might fall down, you know? Who would do that? But you do that every day. You get out of your bed and you get in the car and you go somewhere thinking it's going to work. You know, you're thinking you're going to be happy or you're going to get what you want. You do that. I mean, and really depressed people, they don't get out of bed. You know, no, I mean, people who are really, who maybe have had a deep insight into life, you know. I find that people who are called crazy or people who are called depressed or schizophrenic, sometimes they're the people who are the most honest, you know. And they're like, I'm not getting out of bed. And you say, why? And they say, well, I don't know if it's going to work out. You know, whatever I'm going to try, I don't know if it's going to work out. And if you're honest, you don't know either. You could get in the car and have an accident and die, you know. You could get in the car and go to work and they fire you. Or you could get in the car and go to work and they keep you for 20 years and then you're old and dead, you know. You don't know what's going to happen. It's just the same as the airplane. And it's just the same as the calculator. You have no idea if any particular action you undertake to be happy or contented, even reaching out for one of our bake sale cookies during the break, you have no idea if it's going to be good for you or not. You don't know. You really don't know. Except ours are really good. And they support, I'm going to do an ad. We send like 15, I don't know, 10 to 15 young students to Tibetan monastery once a year to study. And they're all broke and they don't have any money. And then what we do is we do these dumb bake sales, and then we beg you to buy some of the cookies and stuff, even though you don't know what's going to happen. And then I always tell people, just give them $20 for a cookie, okay? Just do it like that. Because it's not for the cookie, right? It's that they are learning some wisdom, and they're going to be sitting up here in like 5-10 years, and that's what we're training them as teachers. And we're like sending out viruses. We're training viruses. So please be generous during the big stuff. But anyway, she's going to tell. So anyway, you don't know if any particular action that you do to get anything is going to work. And that proves that we don't understand how things work. And we just live with it. We get used to it. And we put up with it. And we don't question it anymore. And you like playing an odds game. You know, I know there's a 30% chance I'll be happy if I get up this morning. You know, there's a 40% chance I won't die before I get home. You know, but you don't know for sure. And Arya Nagarjuna would say that's a solid proof that we don't know how things work. And if you could find out how things work, then the moments of contentment with your partner would be predictable and repeatable and perhaps constant, 24 hours a day. So that's the idea.
So that was riddle number 13. We're going a little bit out of order today. So this is the whole reason that we're doing all of these riddles. We're trying to figure out how things actually do work so that we can replicate them, right? So that we could figure out how to find a good partner, how to stay with a partner, and then how to be happy with them, right? Those three things. And so we're going to go back to the very first verse, and you don't have to look at it, I'll remind you. And talk about when we first met, you know? When is it that you and your partner first met? And how did it happen? What were the causes of this? Because if we could figure out the real causes for meeting someone so wonderful, then maybe we could figure out the causes for keeping them wonderfully and being happy with them wonderfully. You know, if you could figure out the real cause for one single thing in your life, any one single thing in your life, if you could actually nail down the real cause of it, then you could figure out the real cause of everything. This is the theory. This is the theory, you know? Because there is some sort of mistake that we're making. If we can catch ourselves in the mistake, if we can turn it around, if we could figure it out, we could get everything we wanted, right? So, how we met, right? We had this. I don't like to use me. I think I'll use the analogy of the Starbucks. Person, you know, walks into a Starbucks. Guy is waiting in the Starbucks. All of a sudden, girl of his dreams walks through the door. How did it happen? How did it happen? We talked about it wasn't her fault. It wasn't because of anything that she did. It wasn't because she walked through the door. You know? There was no, she had no, it wasn't caused by her. It wasn't caused by anything that she had done. It wasn't caused by anything that, say I'm the guy, that I had done, right? I didn't go to the Starbucks at the right time to see her walk through the door. You know, it wasn't anything she did. It wasn't anything that I did. It wasn't anything that both of us did together, right? We talked about that yesterday. And it wasn't random. So what was it? If it's not random, if it didn't happen without a cause at all, then it had to have some cause, but we just eliminated all the causes that there could be. So what's really going on here? What's really going on here is that you never actually met her. What's really going on here is that she didn't actually exist in the way that you see her to exist, right? You never met her at the Starbucks for the first time. That day in New York, that very first sunny day after all of that winter, right? That never happened. You never met. Why? We have this conception of the world at large, and it's a conception that exists in our mind. Everybody, if I say the world out there, you have a picture. You have an image. You have lots of images, in fact. A lot of images of the world out there. You have a lot of images of a lot of people's lives going on without you perceiving them. Right? And you have an image of your partner's life before they walk through the door. You have an image, like Geshe Michael was talking about the first moment I walked into the door. You have an image of a girl that lived on the beaches of Southern California and they got tired of it and moved to New York. And, you know, like an image of someone that exists without your perception of them. But we talked about it yesterday. We talked about it in terms of this flower. We closed our eyes and we said, could you see the flower before you opened your eyes and perceived it? How can you establish the existence of something before you perceive it with your own senses? It must either exist on a totally different realm than your senses, in which case you could never perceive them, or you're seeing it before you see it. There's only two options. You know? So this existence before we perceive things, that's impossible. It's impossible. The fact is, you could never meet a person who existed before you perceived them. The fact is, you didn't meet the girl that walked into the Starbucks. You created her. You created her. We talked about how the eye functions, right? We talked about how we see Geshe Michael. I like to pick on Geshe Michael. And you're seeing like round and then another round and then a black thing here. And the eye, we said the eye couldn't say, oh, I'm seeing Geshe Michael, because the eye doesn't have a brain. The eye, it only detects colors and shapes. And it detects them one at a time. You cannot see the whole Geshe Michael. You can see pieces. You can see pieces and glimpses. And then the brain pieces all these glimpses together. After your eye is going moments of time, and then pieces them together into Geshe Michael. So who is making Geshe Michael? You are. And that is what's happening with every single thing in your world. We have the reason that everything doesn't work out for us is because we have this conception that things exist outside our perceptions. We have this conception that that we could convince our partner, we could say some words and convince our partner, oh, you should do things this way, and then, they say no and you get into arguments, why? Your partner doesn't exist that way. You can't move things around in the outside world the way that we think we can, because things are not coming from the outside world. Things are coming from our mind. If you see a person walk into Starbucks and suddenly you're struck with their infinite beauty and radiance, it's because of you. So why do we see all these things? You know, if everything is coming from our own mind, if everything is just colors and shapes out there, and we're molding it into something, we're molding the face of the next person who walks through Starbucks into our perfect partner, then how are we doing that? They say that the reason that you see something is because you've seen it before. Like the reason I can see a face up here is because I saw a face before. And there's like an archetype in my mind of images that come up. So where was the first face? Like, where did we see the first face? I mean, what happened? You know, there had to have been a first face. No, there wasn't a first face. We say there was never a first face. We've always been seeing faces. So everything we see, they're just permutations on a theme. They're just archetypes that we're overlaying onto these colors and shapes, right? And the reason we see what we see is because of what we've seen and what we've done before, right? Yeah. We make imprints in our mind by watching, by listening, by understanding what it is we do as we go through the day. Every single second of our lives, we are making, they say 65 imprints, per second. 65 imprints are being stored in our mind and will come out later as our world, right? So in essence, everything that we see now is the result of an imprint we made in the past. So our entire world is the result of all of our past experiences. All the things that we've seen and done and said to others in the past. The most important thing to understand is what makes the pleasant experiences, right? And what makes the unpleasant experiences. Because, who cares if I can see a face? And people are not so interested in why is this flower shaped in a certain six-sided way. Well, maybe some people are. Chuki is definitely interested, but other than Chuki, not as many people are interested in why the petals are shaped in a six-sided way. Most people are more interested in, well, why do I sometimes get happy imprints coming out? And why do I sometimes get unhappy imprints coming out? That's why we're here. The happy imprints come from impressions made in our mind when we have made other people happy. Right? It's very, very simple. It's like the laws of cause and effect. The unhappy imprints in our mind, they come from watching ourselves in the past make other people unhappy. And then, the time goes by, and then the imprint comes out, and we see an unhappy face in front of us, and we don't know where it came from. We can't equate it back to that time when we were making that same unhappy face to someone else, But we made an imprint. We made an imprint there, and it comes out. So the key is to know the code. What imprints make the things that I want? Like, what should I do? What kind of imprints do I want to collect in my mind in order to get the world that I want to appear outside? Because as you said, and maybe I believe it and maybe I don't, I'm creating my entire world, I didn't meet the girl at Starbucks. I created her. I created everyone. I created everything. It's from an image in my mind. So what is the magic imprint to put in the mind to see what I want come out, right? So we're going to go to riddle 10. Talks a little bit about some of the imprints we need to put in our mind. Bushing kamde meyina, jepapoton le chikyer, gelte shingle meshana, shingme baryang, jungwar gyur. If firewood were to the fire itself, then what acts would be what it acts towards. If fire were something outside of firewood, then you could have fire without firewood. So, let's talk about an actual event. I like to get a lot of sleep at night. I like to get a really, really good sleep at night, you know? If I don't get a good sleep at night, I'm really grumpy, and I can't, think properly when I get up here and teach, and then I blame it on him, and, anyway. I set the alarm for, exactly the amount of sleep I need, because unfortunately, there's another person who doesn't need as much sleep as me and is a little bit impatient about getting up and doing his projects in the middle of the night. And so we've developed this compromise. Well, I get exactly the sleep I need and no more, right? And he will get that much sleep too, and we will, exist in a comfortable place. But today, we had this heart yoga thing coming up, and unfortunately, we haven't translated all of the things that we were supposed to for the Tibetan heart yoga. I know a lot of you are probably coming to that. Geshe Michael woke up at 2 hours earlier than the alarm went off, and when he wakes up, I can't go back to sleep. And so I had this choice in my mind. I was like, well, should I just lie here and hope that he'll go back to sleep so that I can get my last 2 hours of sleep, or should I just sacrifice my precious 2 hours of sleep and get up so that he can be less nervous about this heart yoga thing? So what did I do? I made the sacrifice. I got up 2 hours early. It was astounding. I never do this. And why did I do it? Knowing that it would cause me pain, knowing that this lack of sleep is gonna, maybe cause me to be grumpy at 4 in the afternoon or something like that, Did I do it to make me happy, or did I do it to make him happy? You guys are too smart for me. Now, if you're dealing with what we said before about mental imprints, what is the best thing to do if you want to have a peaceful night's sleep and get your whole night's sleep in the future? What would be the best thing for me to do? What would be the imprint that I could plant in my mind to see somebody else, make a sacrifice for me, for instance? Give me the sleep that I needed. It would be, giving him, making the sacrifice. Making the sacrifice in the moment plants an imprint in my mind to see myself, in the future when I'm, getting stressed out about all those Bokjingba translations that I have to do for the Diamond Mountain term, somebody will accommodate me and will give me some peace, I was giving someone some peace. So really, I was making a sacrifice in the present so that I could experience pleasure of peace in my mind in the future, right? This is how things work. This is how things work karmically. This is how things work. It's the law of cause and effect. But this verse, what this verse is talking about is the question of how exactly that works. Because there is one rule about, cause and effect. You get the same result that you planted. It's like a seed. It's like seeds in the ground. You plant a corn seed and you don't expect watermelon seed to come up. You get watermelon seed, you get watermelon from watermelon seeds, you get corn from corn seeds, and you can't plant an imprint in your mind and then get a different thing to come out, right? You must plant the same thing that you want to see in the future. But in making the sacrifice, I was causing myself some sort of discomfort, uncomfortability. You could say a slight amount of pain. Actually, it really wasn't that bad, but I had to come up with some example for the teaching. So anyway, I was causing myself some slight discomfort or pain in order to produce pleasure in the future. So how does pain produce pleasure? How does planting, seeing myself do something that causes me pain, produce a pleasurable effect in the future? Where is the line? When does it stop being pain and start becoming pleasure? And who gets it when it becomes pleasure? That's what this verse is talking about. You have to think about it. You have to think about mental imprints and how they work. And why causing pleasure for somebody else bounces back to you as your own pleasure. What is it? Why is it a mirror like that? How does it work? How does this law of cause and effect really work?
I thought tonight to take a break a little bit earlier, but I wanted to there's a little bit of announcements I have to make first. So don't get your hopes up. First thing, as Candy said when she was starting tonight, it's okay to come for 2 nights and somebody tells you it's not possible that your partners walk through the door. But then what do you do with that? Where do you go with that? And what I wanted to do, I'm just going to ask some people to stand up who are in the Tucson area and they're teaching or counseling, or they're giving ongoing classes, or they're doing something that would be of interest to you or benefit to you. And most of the classes are free. We believe the karma will come. I'll talk about that actually. But and I may forget somebody, please don't be upset at me. I'm not sure who's teaching in Tucson right now, but we'll start. If you want to know about Diamond Mountain University, which is 2 hours from here, and it's a free university, and it's really rigorous, and it's really fun. And you can come for 1 day or 10 years. The director is here, Venerable Chuki. We stand up? The director of the Retreat Center section is here, Venerable Ellie. The director of the university section is here. I think David Stone, is he here? I don't know. He's there.
The calculator guy.
Yeah. And we have a lot of teachers teaching in Tucson. Jim and Allison Day, are they here? Yeah. They're leading a lot of free classes in Tucson. Venerable Marut, Brian Smith, is teaching a lot of classes in Tucson. Candy Hirsch she's doing ongoing help for people who are interested in working about relationships with this kind of thing. Her husband, Gary Hirsch, is the president of the Enlightened Business Institute, which does They help people with businesses or professional careers who are interested in applying these principles. And it's working really nice. Like, we keep getting these letters from people who started billion-dollar companies from following his stuff. So if you're interested in business, that's something you can do. Can you guys think anything else? Yoga? Oh, if you're interested in yoga, is Kimberly being on here? Yeah. Kimberly's in charge of Yoga Studies Institute. They teach yoga around the world, and in Tucson also. Lisa Schrempf is one of the teachers in Tucson. Where is she? Is she here? She's shy. Yeah, she's over there. She's over there against the wall. And then if you're into a Christian path, we've been working on programs that combine ancient elements of Buddhism and Christianity when they met each other in ancient times in India and Tibet. And there's a series of talks going on. They're free. They'll be at St. Philip's in the Hills Episcopal Church on Wednesday nights for the next 5 weeks. And that's Mercedes Bachleda and Will Duncan. Are they here? Yeah. Yeah. So, it kind of covers anything you might want to do, I think, except drugs and stuff. Talk to one of the people who stood up. Did I miss anything? Yeah. And these are mostly ways to carry on. Just because one night of a talk is not gonna change your life. You need like someone that you can talk to once a week or something. I think that's I have two other big announcements. We have a program this summer in India. One of our teachers agreed to teach us a very, very important Buddhist text about this subject, the same subject called emptiness. And he's a very, very senior teacher. He's like the last great Lama in my monastery, who came from Tibet. And so he has scheduled teaching, 10 days of teaching, 12 days of teaching with him this summer. I got a call last week. He had previously had tuberculosis, and he's had a serious relapse of his tuberculosis. So we'd like to ask people to pray for him. His name is Geshe Rinchen. And it seems that he said the doctors had advised him to have a rather serious operation. So he said he wouldn't be able to give the teaching that he had planned, and he'll probably be in the hospital at that time. So, this is a big event, and I think several hundred people were planning to come, and lots of people have bought air tickets and made hotel reservations. And so I talked to Geshe. We had like many hours of talks on the phone from South America. And finally, we just came up, we came up with this idea that he thinks I should teach it. Just to save you guys money, you see. So we're making that announcement tonight that I'll be teaching what he was planning to teach. We're also being on tour of Hong Kong, China, and Taiwan. Previous to that, the books about the subject, the Diamond Cutter book, it's like the third most popular book in Taiwan and China right now. So they've asked us to come and give talks. So a lot of people have asked if they could tack China onto India. And so many people have asked, we just want to make a public announcement that you are very welcome to come. After a great thought about the hassles of 50 Americans traveling through Shanghai, we thought that the reason we're working in China so heavily is that we feel that there will be tension, or that tension is growing, perhaps a new Cold War even, is developing between these two great countries. And we think if private citizens can go to the other country and see that they're just the same as us, with one head, two arms, and all that, that would sort of diffuse the crisis that our governments try to impose on us, So we are working heavily in China, and Hong Kong, and Taiwan, and we feel that if people are planning to come to India anyway, if you would like to come on the China tour with us, we'd like to welcome you and as an ambassador, a citizen from our country to another country. Having said that, we ask you to make your own travel arrangements, your own transportation arrangements, your own lodging arrangements, and please not to impose on our Chinese sponsors who are not very, in some cases they are not in a position, they don't have the money basically to pick you up at the airport on 2 hours notice. Then I have another announcement which is more fun. We are doing a 3-year retreat, a larger 3-year retreat that's starting in 2010. And Diamond Mountain has been gearing up for that. And this 3-year retreat will be different. One of our teachers during the 3-year retreat is here, Laura, from the U of A. She came in every 6 months. We couldn't talk. She came in every 6 months, drove like 5 hours to teach us dance, spiritual dance, during this 3-year retreat. And we're going to do it again, okay? And just warning you now. And this one will be a little bit different in that we're encouraging people to come from 1 week to 1 month to 6 months to a year to 3 years, whatever you want. We're trying to build, and Kat Earhorn's helping with that, and David Stump and Doug Wienhoff, I think. They are gearing up to build 50 very simple Adobe retreat cabins for people. So if you'd like to help with that, talk to them. Can you stand up? Can you guys stand up? So David Stump or Kat Earhorn, Doug Wienhoff. They're like the people to talk to. We just basically need hands to build small Adobe huts for people. Very beautiful, little cute hermit houses on our land, on a very beautiful valley that we have out at Diamond Mountain. And I'm very happy tonight to announce that a sponsor from his own side, who was just inspired by what's happening at Diamond Mountain. And we don't know him. I don't know him personally, but he was so inspired by the university and what's going on there that he contacted us, which we confirmed this afternoon, that he's offering $100,000 to put in the water system for all the 3-year retreat cabins, up to $100,000. So. That saves each of you $2,000, I think. And they wish to remain anonymous because they said they just want to, they don't want to get the personal attention. They want people to know that a person who just walked into one of these things one night was so impressed with what everyone's doing at Diamond Mountain that they feel like they wanted to send a message to the world that they felt this was a precious thing. So that's like some coolness. So we'll be up here, Kristen and I will be up here. Please come up to either one of us if you just want to say hi or if you have a personal question. And please, if there's people behind you, then try to do it quickly so that so that they get a chance. Tonight's being the last night. Okay, so we'll take a break now. And sorry? Oh yeah, don't forget the bass down. Okay. All right. So have a nice break, and we'll see you in a couple of 10-15 minutes. Sorry it takes so long to break, but it's kind of a chance for all of us to get to know each other, and sometimes I think that's more important than the teaching. So we kind of stretch it out. We're going to go to riddle 14, which is on page 12. Taja tawa tawa po, sembotera nini tang, tamje kyang ni kanchen du, chepan yoro yoro. the things we see and the fact that we see and the person it is who sees them, it's impossible for any two of these three to ever make contact with each other. So, we applied it to relationships about hugging. Because do you ever make contact when you have a hug? And there's different kinds of hugs, Like, monks aren't supposed to give you a real hug. There is such a thing as a real hug. Like a squish hug. And so, when you do a squish hug, do you really make contact? It's like that, on one level it's like that foot reaching the line of the door thing. Like, a physicist would say, I think, that your atoms and their atoms are just kind of floating around in the proximity of each other. And that there is no solid edge of your skin or your clothing to make contact with them. So in a way, a physicist, I think, would say, I've heard a physicist say that your feet never touch the floor, really. And so that's interesting, but what's it got to do with me? We're going to take it this way. We're going to go with you this way. A lot of times when you tell somebody, look, when you meet a person who looks interesting to have a partnership with, or even when you're giving someone a hug, don't forget that the way you see them is coming from you. You see? The way you experience a hug, or whether or not you get to experience a hug, right? It only comes from one thing. It doesn't come from like putting mistletoe above the door, and it doesn't come from like, bumping into them, like turning the corner at the right moment. Like some people do that at work, They're like, if I could spill her coffee, she would pay attention to me. And there's different ways to get people's attention, right? The idea here is like if you wanted someone to hug, and if you wanted a nice hug, if you wanted to make what we call contact, there's only one way that it could be going on, since you never touch each other, right? I mean, physically, scientifically speaking, you never touch each other. But we have an experience of touching each other. So where does this experience come from? Okay, if my atoms don't meet her neutrons, I don't mind. But if I could get a hug, that's okay. You can call it what you want. How do you get a hug, you see? According to the idea that we've been talking about, it's just your mind. It's just like slopping paint and making this picture. Like at the moment, in 5 seconds, your mind is like whoosh, 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 and you experience a hug. So it's just your mind, right, projecting this experience of a hug. Whoop, 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 and then there's a hug. So, that's okay. I just want them. I don't really care how they're... If the mind's doing that, that's okay too. If I can get a hug out of it, that's okay. I don't mind that. So that there's two principles here. One, if you want hugs, you have to give hugs. You see what I mean? Like, there's people in your life that are dying for a hug from you. Maybe your parents, for example. So according to this idea, the perception in your mind of a hug comes from giving hugs to people that maybe you're not thinking about hugging, you see? Like, probably there's lots of people in your life who would love to have some physical contact with you, a nice hug once in a while. And then your mind's on the hug that you'd like to have, and not so much on the hug that they'd like to have. But according to this system, you see, you can only get whatever hugs you give. And then to me, the first question in my mind would be, look, is it 1-to-1? Like I was in business, right? Like I was in a big corporation, like I want to hear the numbers here, like do I have to give one hug to get a hug? And I don't know, that's a lot of work. The nice thing about this system is that if you give a hug knowingly, right? If you go out of here tomorrow, if tomorrow, because of this talk, wanting some more hugs, if it occurs to you in your mind that the way to get some more hugs would be to go give some to some lonely people that I know who would properly love a hug from me, like my mom, or my dad, or my uncle, or somebody like that. They would like a phone call, And if I'm anywhere near, they'd like me to come over and give them a hug. If you think like that, in order to produce your own hugs, they come faster and they come more. Okay? Like they come back in order of like 100 to 1. So this is a good business. You see? Now, and people say, we built a business. We were trying to raise money for Tibetan refugees. I know nothing about business, and I hate business. I'm not interested in business at all. So we prayed, and it said, do a diamond business. And I don't know anything about diamonds, nothing. And but we started it on these principles, that if you give a hug purposely and kindly, 100 hugs will come back. And that company has doubled every year. I think it's the fastest growing company in the history of Manhattan. I think it's up to 200 million now. You see? So it works. I'm not trying to convince you to get rich. You can do that if you want. You got to talk to Gary Hirsch. And also Raphael Cervantes. He's here too. He runs another business. He runs another business organization. They're both good. His specializes in more like business executives learning to work in projects to help other people in other countries in order to build their own business bigger, you see. But anyway, I'm just saying, like, you could get 200 million hugs if you know how to play your hugs right, you see. So this is fun. This is nice. It's nice to get hugged. And the way it happens is it comes from your mind, you see. How do you plant that seed? Go home tonight, think about who is wondering if you're ever going to give them a hug. You see? And then you'll find out that the person that you have in mind that you would like to get a hug from will give you a hug. One last question. And then Chrissy is going to do the wrap-up. If I have to give hugs to get hugs, because hugs were really coming through the medium of my own awareness, right? So in a way, haven't I created this person? Isn't this person like a figment of my own imagination? Am I just like this totally lonely person, sitting in the middle of the universe, creating all other stuff around me, you know? And what kind of fun would that be? You know, like if what you're talking about hugs, if I can only get a hug by giving a hug, because the hug is a perception coming from me, then I feel even more lonely now, you know? Now I'm going to get all these hugs, but I'm going to feel worse, you know? So that's something we have to talk about. The minute you teach somebody about this kind of way things work, you have to mention, look, people are coming from your mind. The people you meet during the day and how they act towards you is only coming from how you treat other people. That's the key to everything, how you treat other people. Whatever you do to other people will come right back to you. That's all we're saying. But your mind projects them as real people. Okay? You got to get used to that. What's it say here? There's a mind here. Can I do that one, or you can do it? This one? Yeah. Don't look at your paper. Just listen. Somebody comes up to Arya Nagarjuna and says, look, if everything's empty, then nothing can stop or start. So who's going to give me a hug? Like, according to you, everything's empty. According to you, everything's empty. And Arya Nagarjuna leans over. This is his most famous line. I get to do his most famous line. He says, look, if things weren't empty, you could never get a hug. Got it? Get it? No. What does empty mean? What does empty mean? Point to one thing in this room that's not coming from you. Point to one thing in this room that's not coming from how you take care of other people. And you can't find anything. That's emptiness. If that wasn't in this room, you could never get a hug. Got it? If you didn't get it, you got it. I'll do it one more time. I'll say it one more time. What does emptiness mean? You cannot point to one thing in this room that is not coming at this moment from your own mind according to how you've been taking care of other people. And Jesus said that. I mean, everybody says that. Right? What you do will come back to you. So everything that's coming to you is something you did before. The fact that nothing else exists in any other way is emptiness. That's what Nagarjuna means when he says emptiness. So now when you come up to Nagarjuna and say, is everything empty? You're going to say, There's nothing in this room that's not coming from me. Well, then that doesn't that mean that you're like totally lonely person, like there's no other person in the universe except you, and all these things are just coming out of your mind. No, get it. They are real people because they're coming from your mind. Really. Your mind is projecting them as real outer people, so they are. You got to get used to that. Okay? You're not some lonely person sitting in your head. It's not true. We all exist. All of us around you exist. Because you have made us from how you have been treating other people in the past. And we're totally real. We can punch you in the face, we can give you a hug. You know? Which one you get is up to you. Okay? Got it? Okay. All right.
It's really tricky. Don't feel like you're the stupidest person in the room if you didn't get that last part, because there are people studying for 10, 20 years and they're still trying to rack their brain over this very question. So we're going to a very deep level here, and you need to hear the teachings over and over and over again before it really sinks into your mind. Because we've had misperceptions of our world for so long and it's so ingrained that one, 15-minute statement about how you really see things is not going to change your mind. Our minds are these huge places. We've only got like a tiny bit of our minds that are actually conscious, and then you picture all of this deep subconscious levels that we're actually acting upon all the time. And we need to get to the point where these teachings have reached the subconscious levels. And in order to do that, it takes a long time. It takes going over these ideas again and again, and trying to practice these ideas in our actual life. So, if you're really interested in understanding this stuff, the best thing to do is to try, just in a small way, to put it into practice, right? And then see how your reality changes, and then you have an actual experience of it instead of someone just telling you about it. You have an actual experience in your own life, and then you can relate it to something, and then it becomes this deeper, more subconscious understanding. And then the next time you hear Geshe Michael say this thing about, oh, it's empty and therefore they are real, then suddenly this light will go off and you'll understand it in a deeper way. So that's how it happens. We don't have a lot of time to go through the rest of these, so you can do it on your own at home. But we're going to do one that we really like a lot for the last one here, which is, what's that? Actually, Geshe Michael was going to do this one, but now I get to do it. He likes to switch the plans on me at the last moment. Where did you put this? Okay, that's empty. That's from... So we're doing riddle number 22. How can my partner be the Buddha if no one is anyone? So this is like a continuation of what we just talked about. Deshin shekpe rangshin kang, deni drodi rangshin yin, deshin shekpa rangshin me, droa diyi rangshin me. Whatever the nature of a Buddha is also the nature of a suffering being. But the Buddhas have no nature of being a suffering being. So this is about the culmination of our practice. The reason that we call it spiritual partnerships is because we were meant to do more on this planet than eat and sleep and get together and copulate and die, right? We were actually meant to evolve into a higher kind of being, into a being that we call an enlightened being. And we use our relationship in its highest sense in order to get to that state of this enlightenment, right? How do we do this? We do this by practicing certain attitudes with our partner. Because now we understand that our partner is empty. The way that we see our partner is coming from our own minds, from how we took care of others in the past. So we can actually take this one person, this person who we're closest to, this person who is the most intimately connected to us in our lives, and we can use them to get them to take us to heaven. That's the way we're going to do it, okay? So this is how it works. You practice seeing them as your spiritual guide. You hear what they say, and you think, maybe this is not just an ordinary statement. Maybe they're trying to tell me something special. You give this person the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you're not just that person who came from the Southern California beaches and got sick of it and flew to New York. Maybe actually you were sent from a higher place, and you're just kind of in disguise being my partner so that you can pull me slowly up to where you know I really should be, right? To my highest potential, to my ultimate evolution. The more you practice thinking this way about your partner, because they're empty, right? You are planting imprints in your mind to see them that way, for real, in the future. So the more you see them as your spiritual teacher, the more in the future they start acting like your spiritual teacher. They start doing really suspicious things and saying really wild things about, really teaching you, and really giving you profound advice, and really acting like a holy being, So they start appearing to you as more and more pure, as more and more holy, as your own mind gets purer and purer. And in this way, you take each other up the ladder, step by step, to enlightenment. Your own mind is getting purer because you are practicing with them to see them purely. And then in response, they're just appearing to you more and more glorious. And until there's one day when you look on them and you're sure, this is not a human, This is not a normal, ordinary being. This is a Buddha. This is an angel. You can call it anything you want, but this is like my guide, my savior. And you're struck by the miracle that you have created. So what are they really? This is what this verse is talking about. Your partner has no nature in themselves of being a suffering being, and your partner has no nature in themselves of being an enlightened being that can take you to heaven. Your partner is completely empty of either of these. So what this means is, on a bad day, you could see them as a normal suffering being. On a good day, you could see them as a holy angel taking you to higher place. And that's what they are for you on that day. Your partner shifts. They're neither, and they're both, right? They can be either, depending on how you act towards them, how you treat them. So which one would you rather have? It's not an easy practice. I won't kid you. It takes a lot of hard work to train your mind to act in a special way towards somebody else, especially somebody else who you're very close to and you're used to thinking of in a certain way. But it's absolutely the holiest thing that you can do with your life. And as Geshe Michael said in the beginning of this teaching, it's the quickest way for all of us to reach the highest goals of our life, to reach that ultimate place where we don't have to feel pain anymore at all. We don't have to die. We have bodies made of light instead of flesh that will get old. And we have minds that are completely happy, and they're completely aware of everything in the universe, and they're completely in love with every single being they see there. It's a beautiful place to go, this goal I'm talking about. So please use your partners wisely and get both of you there as quickly as you can. Yeah. I always forget he hands this. Sashi Bogi Jukshi Medo Chamri Avlinshi Thank you.
We have some thank yous. First of all, to Tim on the sound. And if Skip, who would come up also from the Y, from the historical. Skip here. And to our holy teacher. Thank you for all your teaching. Thank you all for coming. Nice. Oh, if people can stack your chairs
Oh, yeah.
in rows of 6, over that direction, and
Yeah,
put them
Will.
against that wall.
Will, for me? Will, bring your tablets tomorrow, okay? All right.